It did.
Our
It
live.
makes it live.
Yay.
Yeah.
Technology is working for us tonight, right?
Yeah.
We're
We're always
happy
a little
people.
bit, you have no idea, ladies, how much we hold our breath at this moment. Like, is it going to go on? So wonderful, Diane. I'm glad you're on with me. And so originally I was scheduled to do this solo, and I'm always much more comfortable with any one of the coaches, especially Diana. And so if you would just kind of let us know that you are here and that we are live, we would appreciate that. It helps us out so much to be able to see that indeed we've got it going. So I think it'll feed in here pretty quick, but just say, hey, and let us know where you are. Remember also that this is a public Facebook live. And so monitor your comments. Yay, they're on. Monitor
Oh,
your comments accordingly. And hi, Pam. We're so glad you're here.
oh, we
Um,
got him. Okay, good. I
they're
was
up.
just
They're up.
I was just texting Martha. I can't say I think we're good. How do you like that?
I think we're good. Yeah. And so, others, if you would join us, we're going to have a great conversation. The four of us, Martha, Pam, Diana, and I, we would be happy to do that. We're so glad y'all are on. We really are. Tonight, we're going to talk about I feel so bitter and angry. How do I heal my heart? Would love to see if some others are on. If you're on, please just say hello. We'd love for you to join us. We're going to have a pretty interactive night tonight if we can help it. That's something that we would really like to do. And so I feel so bitter and angry. And so Martha and Pam, if we can kind of start with you, we're going to talk about just for a minute this bitterness and anger. And we wanted to talk about or say, hey, where does this initiate? Like, where did your own bitterness and anger initiate? Was it from, a spouse that is never present? Is it a spouse that's really hard on your children? Is it a, mother-in-law? Is it a neighbor? What is it that you find yourself continually kind of angry, bitter, and resentful? And that this topic really helped, thought like, how do I heal from that? Let me say hello to the rest. Cheris and Terry, Franklin, hello. Celeste, hello. Glad you're here. Don Phillips, hey, glad you're here. Thank you, ladies. Have questions regarding the live tonight, use the following link. And so we would love to see your questions and to be able to answer those. We want to talk about this topic a little bit, just anger and bitterness, and then how to heal from it. And then we'll go into how most of all the coaches we typically do this, kind of go into a Q&A time. We'd love to be a part of answering that. And also, if our host, the one who's helping us, not Diana or I, would put up a banner about E2C at some point, we would love that as well. And so, anyway, so again, if you would, all right, so here it comes. Let's see. I have a friend who is really struggling with anger and bitterness. So this is timely. Okay. So my first question as we start out tonight, after you've said hello, I would love for you to tell me, kind of think about yourself, if there's bitterness, resentment, anger, and it's kind of chronic, meaning it's long standing. It may ebb and flow a little bit, but you've had it for a long time. Just like that, you can fire off some anger. You know that you're angry.
Yeah.
I want you to just kind of talk to us a little bit about it. Where does it come from? What are you, when you, Diana, if you would maybe kind of talk about rumination just a little bit. If this story keeps going round and round in your head, well, like Diana's kind of expert at that. Let's talk about that just a second.
Just want to remind you all that are signing on tonight that we're live from Leslie Vernick's public Facebook page. So just so you know that this is not a private Facebook page and all of your comments will be visible to the general public. Um, and so we just want to remind you of that. And if you have a question, please feel free to ask your questions. You can disguise it as a friend or a neighbor, and we're here to help. Uh, when we think we're really talking about I'm bitter and angry, but I think anger and bitterness can be two different things. I think of anger surfaces first, right?
Right.
And then if we chew on it a little bit, as Elise said, ruminate about it, it can become bitterness. And, and I think that anger serves a purpose. When we feel angry, it's our body's way of telling us something's happening that I don't like, or that's not okay, or that's unfair. And it often occurs when we've been seriously harmed or abused. And that can be in any manner. It could be physical, spiritual, emotional. Um, and I think, as you mentioned, if we fester on that or hold on to it, and there's many, many ways that we can hold on to it. We can hold on to it physically, mentally, cognitively, rehearsing it over and over in our minds. And I think that's our mind's way of trying to put it to rest or make sense out of it sometimes, but we don't recognize that it's really just stirring us up over and over again. And I think that's what the Bible calls, well, that's why God informs us and instructs us to forgive so that we don't hold on to this root of bitterness.
Mm-hmm.
But and they use in my definition here, it says if it's left to fester, even if it's righteous anger, it can become a corrosive ulcer. And when I think of that, Elise, I think that that's a good term for it because I think it can affect us physically. What do you think?
Yeah, I really think so too. And I love that you inserted righteous anger because I think many times we are festering righteous anger
Yeah.
that we have been sinned against, and we are trying to defend that in some way. And so we are angry because we've been sinned against, and we want to, we're trying our best to make it right or make sense of it. And in that rumination, I know we've all been there. We were talking about this, a month or so ago, kind of around the Conquer conference, and someone said they didn't feel like they were ruminating, and we went, I think everyone ruminates, and we we got a little tickled around that because we just all do it. There's always probably some tape going on some level, but we want to, as you were saying, Diana, I mean, just kind of this toxicity in our body and this chronic,
Well, and it's most often legitimate. I have a list here, but I'm going to let you read from the chat while my lights are flashing and they're not supposed to. So it's not distracting.
You've got the disco thing going on behind you just a little bit. Yeah, Lisa, thanks for commenting. Lisa said, when I said, what is it? This anger and bitterness, where did it originate?
Yeah.
Lisa said, I was played. And I see that now. And that can be, I mean, that feels pretty bad. I mean, there's just no getting around that, to kind of like, I was played as a fool. And one of the things I kind of want to say just briefly around that a lot, that I think it feels terrible to feel like you were a fool, that you got played. But we can all be fooled. And it really kind of speaks probably to a trusting heart that you have, right? That you believe what others, say. And that's a beautiful thing. And so remember that you aren't the fool. You were fooled. FOOLED. The fool was someone who played you. And the Bible really speaks about the fool, right? And we can all be deceived. And so my hope is that you begin to forgive yourself first and foremost, Lisa, that you would realize, wow, I was fooled, but I am not the fool, right? I was sinned against and caused harm to me. That we can feel foolish because we were played, right?
Well, and I don't think, and when you think that you feel foolish because you were played, it's not wrong to trust and to be open with someone. I think you feel foolish because you didn't know what you know now.
Right.
And you moved into it. And so I think in that situation, the best way to redeem that is to learn from it so that you're not fooled again.
Right.
Yeah.
And Lisa, why don't you, if you would just kind of join us, what have you learned from it? And this is really a good little place right here that as we are learning from our experience, it's really important that we do say, what have I learned? What has the other side shown me who they are? What have I learned about myself?
Yeah.
I was, in a client experience even today, and talking about this very, very thing. I said, let's really kind of stop and look at, what do you know now about the person, the people, the group of people, whatever it is on the other side of you? What did you learn about them that you didn't know before? Now, given that, also, what have you learned about yourself? And sometimes we learn that we have pretty soft boundaries.
Dr. Phil would say, you're a victim once, you're a volunteer the second time.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to write that down. Right. You're a victim once, you're a volunteer the second time around. Right? My mother used to say,
fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Shame on me.
So this is like, I mean, and who doesn't learn from their experiences? We can choose. And I think that's how you can step out of feeling foolish, is that I can learn from this. I can redeem this situation.
Right.
Let's see. Lisa's saying she could pay closer attention to her gut feeling. It was telling the truth, and I wouldn't. And you know what? That happens a lot. Often, and actually, the information that I got from Dr. Phil is through a book that he has, which I listened to on audio, and he says exactly that. Often we have information right up front that we just don't, we have like some gut feeling, but we don't have all the information, and we might just discount that, or someone plays to our values, and we just kind of throw caution to the wind. Mm-hmm. And then we end up in those situations. That's a really good comment. Mm-hmm. I'm going to read this comment from Dawn, and maybe have you speak to it. Dawn says, my anger started to surface when my husband finally started real recovery after 4.5 years of pretend recovery from porn, emotional affairs, emotional abuse that led to physical assault. Mm-hmm. So what she's noticing is that when he finally started really recovering, then she just got angry. And I think it's because you knew what to do all along, and now you're finally doing it. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think it almost goes back to Lisa's point a little bit. She realized she got played for 4.5 years. He was just pretending, and here she is, probably likely really investing in his recovery, or think she's investing in it. And she finds out, he was bluffing her. And I mean, there's just nothing about that feels great, right? That you got played again. It's just another version of being played.
Would you like me to read my list of how I know I haven't let go of anger and bitterness, how I'm still hanging on to it?
I would love it.
All right.
No, they would too.
I read an article a while ago, and I just loved it, because it was like, if you think of that person, and this is just ad lib, if you think of a person and your stomach starts to turn and you feel a grr, there's some work to do there. And you may have righteously been hurt, you know what I mean? And it's a legit grr, but what do you do with that? We don't want to hang on to that, because it will affect us in all of our ways. Mm-hmm. So here's a couple things to think about. And so if I read off this list and someone comes to mind, you have some work to do. And so what we're going to talk about here today is for you. So you have imaginary conversations in your mind. You have this chatter going on about how you're going to replay this, or what you'd like to say to this person, right? And you're trying to kind of work it through, or say what you need to say. The second one is, you feel the need to talk about them to someone else, or tattle on them. I'm so sorry. You feel the need to tattle on them, to slander them. You replay a conversation or experience over and over in your mind. You're happy when they fail. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You feel anger every time you hear their name or think of them. I mentioned this one. Your stomach turns. For me, it's like it's all in the gut. Or, when that person comes around, you find yourself not acting natural, pulling back, shutting down. Maybe there's some anger and some work to do there. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts about those things? Like, are those helpful for you to know that I haven't let go? I still have some work to do with this person, or
Mhm,
maybe you're hanging on to that anger and bitterness because you know you were wronged, and you
mhm,
feel like it's your right to hang on to that. I
mhm,
know one reason for hanging on to that is maybe if I hold on to this anger and bitterness, I'll have my shield and my armor up and I won't get hurt again.
mhm.
And so it feels like the right thing to do, but we often don't recognize that it's harming us as well.
Right, right. Lisa said, Pay closer attention to my gut feeling. It was telling me the truth and I wouldn't listen."
Mm,
Right. And so one of the things, yeah, that Lisa, and I think that there's an old phrase, I wish I had a dollar for every, whatever is next. But there's some level of, I wish I had a dollar for every person that said to me, I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. Right. And so oftentimes I want to help people kind of stand in a little bit of grace in that. Sometimes that one red flag just doesn't have enough data around it. We feel something, that didn't feel right, and then good data comes in, and so that one piece of data kind of gets overshadowed, like, oh, it was just a one-off. And we all have one-offs. We all have a really bad moment, or say something not so kind, or behave in a way that we would not normally. That's not really who we are. And that's a one-off.
yeah.
And so, but a one-off, but one of the things is that I want you all to do is that, because our gut will get a little louder and a little louder when we collect
Mhm.
more and more data, right? And these are our eyes of evaluation. We're always, always, always evaluating the scene. And I want you to encourage you to pay attention to what you are evaluating and listen to that data. Maybe the data points are a little closer than we're giving them credit for. This happened, and then a week later this happened, and then that happened, right? And that for some reason we keep excusing it, or somebody tells us, like, hey, did you see that? Awfully mean. Oh, he was in such a bad mood that night. Oh, he had such a terrible childhood. Oh, his parents or something, right? And so we are brushing aside data that's coming in that is meant to be instructive and protective. So one of the things that we said from the very beginning, what have we learned from that experience? And Lisa's so brave to say, hey, I I had a gut reaction to it, and now I'm going to pay closer attention to it. Let me read a couple of the comments, if I may, and let's comment around it a little bit. That's
Mm,
the thing, not knowing. It's a shame that we aren't required to take a class in school that covers relationships and what to look out for concerning abuse. It is. It really is. But the truth is, we have data now. We weren't required, but there are books out there, and there's certainly a lot of information out there that most of us didn't know even 10 years ago. When I was in grad school, probably same for you, Diana, when you were in grad school, we learned about all kind of personality disorders. Narcissism was one of them. That way back was, an outlier almost. You never heard much about narcissism. And now we really have an incredible understanding. I think we've kind of shrunk the definition a little bit from the DSM, but we have a great understanding, or a much better understanding, right, of what that is. And so it even so much so that, kind of lay people have a really good understanding. Now, do we heed the warning is one of the things that we're kind of talking about today. And so when you have information, are you heeding the warning, or are you blowing it off? Right. So let's go down to Martha. The anger and hurt I'm feeling now is a result of suppressing my emotions for too long. I grew up with a difficult mom who never did her hard work. I ended up choosing a husband who had similar qualities. Sure. I've been divorced for 5 years. I've spent too much time making others feel okay and comfortable, and
mm,
totally losing myself.
yeah.
I want to heal from these toxic emotions and let it go forever. I just keep going around and around in my mind. So my hope is that you heard a little bit about what Diana was talking about with rumination. I think I may be always weeding this garden. I'm at a point where, ooh, I can't read the rest. Can you? Right? Sorry.
Oh, I don't believe we have access.
Okay. To the
Without showing it, I don't have access.
Okay, that's all right. Yeah. Yeah. And so so let's just begin the conversation a little bit because it's 10 till 8 about maybe some steps to kind of heal and begin to heal. And some of the things that I often do before these talks, because I want to be somewhat congruent with certainly, you know, uh, through training, we know a lot of ways to heal. Diana and I both, really all the coaches do, no doubt. But really walk a little congruent with what Leslie's teaching as well. I think there's some great resources, no doubt, on Google, but all resources out there are great. And so, um, some of these topics as well are on some blogs that Leslie's provided, so you can have this information not only through what we're talking about tonight, but oftentimes some similar wording or topics have come up with Leslie as well. And so one of the things that certainly Leslie teaches is empowerment, and that's really what we are kind of campaigning tonight and through our Facebook lives recently, is really inviting you to empower to change. Our 6-month class, we only offer it one time a year from January to June, meeting approximately every other week through those 6 months. It'll be 12 sessions, very, very small, 15-1 ratio, one coach, 15 other participants in the class. So it's going to be a very intimate class. With what Leslie offers, you won't get any more intimate unless you do one-on-one coaching. And so this is a really wonderful time to kind of be in the trenches with others. When we come to that group, you are going to be with like-minded other women. We only accept women into this group. And so you're going to have women in this group that, yeah, they're walking with some real bitterness, right? They don't know how to shake it. They don't know how to heal from it. And we talk about that as we go through. And part of the healing is this empowerment. We are not a feminist group at all, but we know that God has a place for women in this time, in this generation. And it's not to be, you know, dictated to by men. Certainly, scripture speaks of leadership in the home. But what we often experience, and unfortunately, the church has propagated this, is dictatorship, that someone just gets their way just because they're the male. And that's not at all what scripture says. The leadership is really from a place, it's such a beautiful passage, but it's a place of love. It's not a place of selfishness in any way. And I think that for many of our women, it's been so misused upon them. And so part of E2C is saying, hey, I actually have a voice. I'm a mature adult. I need to begin to look at me and take charge of me, right? Did I in any way, was I complicit? Not complicit, but did I go along with what happened? Oh, okay. Oh, well, I was trying to keep the peace the best I could, and things just piled on, and you've gotten more and more resentful. The way he treats your children, the way he treats you, the way he lives over you. And now you're walking around with a lot of bitterness. In Power to Change, we're going to really learn how to take charge of us. And that's really one of the first steps of healing in this process. We kind of identified bitterness and anger. Thank you, Diana, for doing that. It, kind of initiates with anger. When it hangs on and has some stickiness, it turns into bitterness and resentment. And then oftentimes we're just like spinning in it all the time, ruminating all the time. And Diana gave us a whole bunch of steps. It's like, here's how you can identify if you're stuck. These are the things that you're wanting to do. You're kind of wanting them to fail. You're wanting them, not good to happen, to them, that you're thinking about them all the time. You're thinking about what you're going to say to them all the time, right? And so, healing then is going to be about you taking a hard look at yourself. One, what you're telling yourself, is that true? And how do I change my narrative so that I can empower myself? What will I need to do to take charge of me and not let another be in charge of you?
Well,
Diane, do you want to kind of
I
continue?
do. Um, the first step is we want to determine you're feeling bitter and angry. But I think it's really important to narrow down what am I really angry and bitter about.
Right.
You're feeling it. it's festering, but like really define what is it that's happened to me that I'm angry about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would say determine, does it seem reasonable that I'm angry? And it may very well be reasonable that you're angry. Um, Sometimes it may not. Um, so I think it's really important to identify what specifically it was. Sometimes I'm just feeling something
Mm-hmm.
and I know I'm angry, but I'm not quite sure what the wrong was. And you and I, Elise, have conversations about stories in our life. And sometimes talking it over with a friend, I can get to the bottom of, oh, that's why it wasn't okay. I just sometimes just know I'm feeling angry, but I'm not quite sure exactly what it was. And to have someone else validate, like a close friend, who says, yeah, that's just weird. That's just awkward. That's not okay. You know what I mean? Then you're like, then you're validated. Okay, but now what do I do with that? And I think you and I talked about this, Elise. We are biblically mandated, right, to forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that look like? And how do I step into that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think first and foremost, recognizing that forgiveness really is a way that I can start valuing who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So forgiveness is a way of me freeing myself of
Mm-hmm.
what's been cast on me, what's happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it a little bit more my friend. Because sometimes if I don't look at it that way, it's like, I don't want to forgive. I have a right to be angry. Sometimes it's, we have a willful spirit and we don't want to step into the mandate of God or we don't know how. And I
Mm-hmm.
think first and foremost, forgiveness is a choice.
Yeah.
I'm choosing to forgive.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Hey, I love that. Yeah. Um, involves intentional decision. Yeah. That we're going to let go, and that forgiveness, we're going to let go of that resentment and anger, right? And we're going to forgive that person. Does not mean that we have to be friends with them or stay friends with or in relationship with them, right? That's a whole separate thing. But it says, as I've been forgiven, I can forgive you also. Means I'm going to let go to the best of my ability of that resentment and anger. That I'm going to intentionally step into that. Yeah. What were you going to say?
I didn't mean to step over you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I just don't want. So,
Well, I
uh,
like to think of forgiveness as being about something that's occurred in the past. If
yeah.
something's occurring, and I will forgive moving forward, but I might address it differently. We're talking about letting go of things I might be. First, I think to get current, let's think about what am I holding on to from the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, if it'd be helpful, we do exercises like this all the time to sit down and just sit before the Lord and ask Him to bring to mind anyone that you're holding resentments and bitterness against. It might be a person or it
Mm-hmm.
might be a situation. For me, I know exactly because that person will come to mind and I'll feel the grr. And
Mm-hmm.
you write it down on your paper and then you have your list to come before the Lord and it's clearly a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to align my heart, my spirit, and my body with this choice, right? So my heart wants to obey the Lord, so I'm going to choose to forgive. The next step is I'm going to order my thoughts around that. And I have a friend who is just a deeply lovely woman. And she put it so plainly when she said, I'm choosing to forgive. I am forgiving. I have forgiven. And so when that resentment comes up again, you're going to rehearse that to yourself. No, I've chosen to forgive. I have forgiven. I'm walking in forgiveness with that. So you're not going to ruminate about that resentment over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Let that go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If our assist with tonight would maybe write that down. I love that. Um, Diana, say it one more time so maybe others can write it in the chat, or Leslie Assist can write it in the chat. So I choose to forgive.
I choose to forgive. I am forgiving. I have forgiven. When it comes up, because it's going to come up again and again and again. And we are aligning our heart and our mind with the truth that we're walking in Ephesians 4:31 through 32.
Mm-hmm.
It says, be kind to one another, tenderhearted,
Mm-hmm.
forgiving one another as Christ has forgiven you. Now, ladies, I'm not saying we feel like it. And I'm not saying we're not justified in being angry. There may be a debt owed to us.
Mm-hmm.
But God is the one who is responsible for canceling those debts, not us. We don't get to carry those. And so we want to do with that is, and so you like how do you be tenderhearted towards someone who's just been evil toward you, right?
Right.
And how do you walk in forgiveness? Well, you tell yourself, no, you write down on a piece of paper, I've canceled that debt. What this person did to me, how they wronged me, what they said about me, how they talked about me behind my back, or stepped over me for a promotion, I'm choosing to lay that at the cross.
Right.
And
Right.
when I face that person again, with all that is within me, I'm going to will the good toward them. And I'm going to be kind toward them. And maybe tenderhearted is I'm not ready for kind words yet. But maybe tenderhearted is I'm just going to pray for you when I see you. I'm going to speak blessing over you, not cursing.
Mm.
And again, and Leslie talks about this a ton. We don't have to be a slave to our thoughts or our feelings. We choose how we want to move forward.
Right.
But it's kind of an act of obedience, but it certainly is getting your will in order, wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm. Well, exactly. And I think you bring up really the perfect point here is that, otherwise we are a slave to that anger and bitterness, and so then guess what's driving us is our emotions are driving us. They are forwarding, our responses or our reactivity towards things rather
Yeah.
than our integrity, who we are, our big circle, the best of who we are. And, instead anger is like driving who I am. Oh, I'm going to show you, or anger is really protecting us, which there can be some goodness in that. But we started off today's session was really kind of identifying some things and saying, oops, I just kind of lost my point. Not identifying what caused anger. Wow. Just like
It's been a long day. We both started really early this morning.
it's been a really long day. No, I mean, I want to pause just a second because I really wanted to say it.
You know,
I can't.
um,
I can't find it, and it'll come back up. But I really want us to, again, to take charge. Oh, it's what we've learned from the experience. Like I can forgive you, but I don't have to repeat it. I don't have to repeat that experience.
yeah.
Because one, I can forgive you. I can be forgiven. I'm a forgiver, right? But I have learned from this experience to be able to reduce the harm that you can do to me. I'm wiser now because of the experience. That doesn't mean we haven't forgiven. And in fact, that can be a really great place of growth for us, is to say, wow, what did I learn in that crucible? What did I learn in that hard spot? Can I be wiser because of it?
So here's a thought, Elise.
Yeah.
It's more like I will remember what you've done, but I will walk in forgiveness and I will not rehearse it again and again and again. And so it seems like it's an oxymoron. Like, how can I remember what's happened to me? But it's important that we remember, right? But we don't want to hang on to the debt. So there's a little bit of kind of like wrapping your mind around this. And it's hard. I think it's hard for if you're a trusting person.
Mhm.
It's hard because I don't know, sometimes we're all or nothing. It's like, can I trust you or can't? But I'm not going to rehearse what you've done to me, but I'm
Mhm.
going to turn around and be kind to you, right?
Mhm.
I'm not going to rehearse that over and over again because that's just entering back into bitterness. But I
Mhm.
am going to remember who you are and
Mhm.
what you're capable of because you've demonstrated it over and over and over again.
Mhm. Well,
So
scripture
that
tells us not to return evil for evil, right? So, ladies, actually, I would love for you to write this down in the chat just so you're kind of participating in this moment of what Diana said. I will remember, I'm not going to forget, I'm going to remember what you've done. without hanging on to the debt.
So
And that's basically,
that's kind of,
I forgive you.
yeah, we've got, look at, well, so whoever's writing in the chat, I don't have access to the chat, and I'm sorry about that, ladies, but Proverbs 4:23 tells us to guard our heart.
Mm-hmm.
This is what guarding your heart is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you protect your heart from becoming corrupt itself, because that's where your life flows from. So I'm going to guard my heart. And I might have, was it Lisa who said that, she felt foolish? I'm going to guard my heart. And with wisdom, I'm going to protect that, because that's the essence of my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up, Diana. We hadn't really talked about that earlier. It's really kind of resonating for me, is that one of the things, and I talked about this Tuesday night a little bit, is that we just we feel like, and we've been accused of, if we remember it, then we haven't forgiven. And we really want to separate those two things in the process of healing, right? That I can remember for wisdom's sake what you've done so that I can protect myself from future harm. That's what the remembrance is about. And so, but it's going to take some willful action to separate the remembrance and remembering, as Diana said, that I have forgiven you the debt.
Yeah, I have to journal this stuff. I really do think that journaling is going to be your best friend, because I first would have to write down. I do have to work through these things, like, what is it I'm really, and Elise, I'll talk about it. Like, I would call Elise after work and, like, well, I had this experience with someone I was in contact with today. And so, you talk with a trusted friend, you wrap your brain around it. Oh, yeah, that wasn't okay. Now, what do I want to do with it? Well, first I have to forgive. But with wisdom, what am I going to learn from this? I would jot it down in your notebook, ladies, because I'm forgetful and I'm trusting. And if I don't recall these lessons, I don't want to replay them over and over and over again. I just don't.
Right.
And so then I'm going to choose to walk in forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, I do want to mention, Elise, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but like, the first step is always obedience, and we do what we're called to do. We don't always automatically just feel that freedom and that lightness and that vitality. It comes as we take the steps forward, and then all of a sudden you look back and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm free of that. I'm feeling joyful, So you may not notice it right in the moment, but give it a chance to let go and to walk in renewing your mind. Right?
Well, and the freedom is the biggest piece, is that when we let go of this bitterness and this resentment, really the freedom, the sense of freedom that we'll feel, it really does not have power. As long as we're holding on to that bitterness and resentment, then it's got power over us.
Yeah.
Right. And, part of what we're going to do is we're going to be we're telling you, we want to invite you into empowered to change. Like, let's do it differently. Let's do it differently. And so what would that mean? That this did not have power over you anymore. This, or this person, or this, this rumination, this anger, this bitterness, right? That we really have begun to heal from it, because we have first really forgiven the debt, and then we're going to take charge of our life in a way. Is there a second step that's different? But, I really want to talk about really beginning to own what you can do differently. That ladies, you have choices to do things differently. And we really want you to see where possibly you are a part. Like, so oftentimes I'll hear in a conversation something really pretty hard going on. And I'm kind of curious why you stayed in that conversation. Well, I didn't feel like I could leave. And tell me more. Why, as a mature adult, would you stand in such a harmful situation? You're not going to stand out in the road and get run over, right? And oftentimes, if you do something different, there's further punishment. We understand that. And so we trust that you're being wise, but we want you to really take a hard look at yourself. Do you have choices? What can you do differently? And so that one, that you can begin to empower yourself to do something different. Like, where you kind of relinquished your power. A couple other things kind of in this forgiveness piece, Diana, that I'd like to, is that we forgive ourselves, right? there's a lot of shame and condemnation that comes along. Like, how could I have been so stupid? I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I believed him all this time, right? And so one of the things is in this healing process is I want you to forgive yourself. I want you to say, you know what, I may not have known then, but I know better now, and so I'm going to need to do better. What will it take for me to take that next step, just the next right step to do better? What can I begin to do differently?
So, as a part of our tagline for tonight is, how do I heal my heart?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's really what we're talking about is the first step to healing your heart is to walk in obedience and to choose forgiveness. Um, and it's also necessary to, as Elise is saying, notice that that's for me. That's how I'm healing me.
Right.
And it might not make intuitive sense that if I'm it may feel like you're letting someone off the hook. But
Mm-hmm.
really, you're placing the responsibility and the authority in God's hands, and we're trusting that He knows why He's
Mm-hmm.
mandating us to do that, and we're going to let Him
Mm-hmm.
be the Lord over this situation. And then, what do you need to do to heal?
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is taking control of your emotions and your thoughts, not mentally rehearsing this over and over again. And so, what would maybe some of you we have a lot of you out there, and I'm wondering what thoughts you might have about the steps to healing your heart. Once I've chosen to forgive,
Mm-hmm.
walking in forgiveness, now what? I might be still feeling the pain. I might be still hurting. What would be some steps to taking care of your mind, your heart, your body? And Lisa's saying acceptance. That is awesome. Acceptance of the outcome.
Yes. 100%. Yes. Thank you, Lisa.
Dawn saying not hanging on to the debt, or not. Whoop, I lost it. Where'd you go, Dawn? Our ticker's moving.
Yeah.
Dawn is saying, oh, yeah, remember, but not hanging on to the debt.
Yeah.
Okay. Nicole is saying looking for patterns of looking for patterns for protection instead of just hanging on to being right to be upset. Yeah, like how can I protect myself in the future? How can I be wise?
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, these are all such good ways of taking care of yourself. Yeah. No, and Linda is saying owning my own truth. I don't have to buy into someone else's.
Yep.
Love that. Remembering, walking in forgiveness, not rehearsing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what else we've got.
Say one quick thing around because I think that especially in the culture that we live in, and owning our own truth is our own truth could be an error. It just could be. We know a lot of people that have bad truth, and so we want to make sure that our truth lines up with Scripture, not lines up with the church, not like lines up with misapplication, but lines up with Scripture. And that is our work to do. What does God's word say about this? And ladies, this is a hard ask. This is a hard ask. Years and years and years ago, I was in seminary, and I think this is one of the things that used to be kind of always a question is we would get in this like, well, it says here and then it says here. What does it mean here versus here? And there were a lot of conversations around a lot of scriptures, and not that the answers or the agreement was wildly different, but this is a challenge what I'm asking you, but we must be in the word, know the word, so that we really do stand on capital T truth. We stand on Christ's word. That's our truth, right? And as we understand, or like that, someone doesn't tell you, well, that's not true. When you know for sure that you saw something, for sure you heard something, for sure you experienced something. That's really what we're talking about when we really, or not, that's not really what we're talking about, but we're also talking about knowing the truth. When someone is constantly, in a sense, gaslighting you or trying to deny your truth, you know you, and you know you well. It's your job to know you well. That's part of our stewardship and part of our healing. Ladies, I'm so glad that you really are looking and writing down and engaging in the chat with us about steps to healing so that you can hear it, look back um, in the feed, write it down. Like, what will acceptance really mean? That may mean a lot for some of you. If I accept someone, I may not be able to stay with them. If I accept what's really happening, I may have to do something radically different.
So, yeah, I mean, and we have Lisa saying in the chat, his path is his and my path is mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a good thought because we get to allow other people to choose. And in that comment that you made, Lisa, is noticing that we get to make our own choices.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm accepting that this person doesn't agree. They're choosing something different. So we have a couple questions, Elise. Do you
Good.
mind if I toss one? I'm going to toss one at you. This is
Are they in the chat at all, or just some that?
They're both.
Okay.
Elise is more athletic, so she can catch this ball. Okay.
I like to read it as well. It takes reading. That's so.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Rachel's asking, does this bitterness and anger come in cycles? Some days I feel like I've come so far only to have them come up again.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to take that or you want to?
Well, I think you said it at the very beginning. You said this is going to come back up. This isn't a one and done. We would love for it to be a one and done, but it's not a one and done, right? That's the enemy, the accuser of wanting to bring it back up. He just does that. He doesn't want to leave it alone. But Diana's really offered some ways, and even with that phrase, that, I certainly, remembrance is not the bad thing, but remembering that I've canceled the debt and reminding yourself of that.
I would tell you also, just to add to that everything comes in all of these emotions. And when you talk about bitterness and anger, grief is like that too, sadness and loss. And I just encourage you to ride the waves. When you notice that it comes up, you want to notice that it's there. Grief's a little bit different. I would tell you to ride that wave and just notice it and feel it. We don't want to step into bitterness. But if I'm feeling angry again, I'm just going to notice that it's there and I'm going to observe it. I'm not going to engage in it. I'm just going to say like, wow, I'm feeling really angry. I'm noticing this again, right? Mm-hmm. And you'll know that you're getting better if it's not as intense and it's not as frequent. So that as time goes on and you're practicing walking in forgiveness, I won't be feeling this a lot during the day as intense as I was. And that's kind of the path to knowing that I'm really moving forward.
Mm-hmm. One of the things is you can also scale or grade your intensity, right? Is that this is really an intense one. This isn't as intense. And when you begin to notice that, much like what Diana just said, and this is just recent. Somebody said this word and I kind of caught on to it, but surf the wave instead of ride the wave. Really think of, standing up on, I couldn't surf if you tried, but, standing up because there's this crest and then they ride that out. And we want you to kind of know that sometimes that intensity, it'll be more intense. So we kind of crest the wave and then we ride it out and then we don't feel it for a while. And so just kind of know that happens to us. And we don't want to put judgment around it. We just want, as Diana is saying, observe it. Like, oh, here it is, but right. And the beauty often is, and I really want to highlight this, what she said, the beauty is that, we want to take note of when there's intensity and then over time, wow, here it is, but I don't feel near as angry as I once did. I don't feel, I'm not even bitter. It's just like, oh, it just kind of popped up and like, but I've got an answer for it. And oftentimes I really kind of, ask my clients when they, like they'll say something, I said, let's answer that. When that thought comes through your head, don't let it just keep coming through and just, cycling the question. Let's answer it, in a way that we can say, you know what, I've asked it and answered it.
Yeah.
It's done. So yeah, what's another question?
Can you heal? This is the classic of all classic. I think this is a very common question. Betty Joe is asking this. Can you heal when you're still with a toxic, abusive person?
You want to take it? You want me to take it? We may have two different. I
I
don't think
think,
we'll have two wildly different answers. I know
I
what you're.
think we'll both probably have something to say about that.
Yeah.
Yes and no.
Go ahead.
Um, and and actually that's a great segue to the work that we do.
Yeah.
And I'll explain some things that we offer here. I have a question here about Conquer, Walking in Core Strength, and E2C.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Talking about healing, the first steps to healing are clarity, awareness, acceptance, openness, some of those things. And we do those things. We have those in our Conquer group. We have a journey that we take you through. We do that in our Walking in Core Strength group coaching program. And we take a deeper dive in our 6-month program, which we're just about to start in January.
Mm-hmm.
And a part of healing is stepping back from engaging in that toxicity 24/7 and
Right.
making and keeping it front and center and beginning to look at you. Who am I? What do I need to do differently? How do I speak out differently? Use my voice, all of those things. Because when we're in relationships with people who are addicted or toxic or abusive, they become the focal point.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of absorb all of our energy and our resources.
That's so
And
true.
so, yes, you can heal. Will you, if you're always living in a home with someone who's angry and toxic and abusive, that will still affect you.
Mm-hmm. It will.
Differently than if you were not in that same environment.
Mm-hmm.
You might, but can you heal? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing too is healing is still somewhat like what you may think healing is, or what I may think healing, or what the next person may think healing is. I think we need to be careful of that word a little bit. What would healing be to you? What would wholeness be to you?
Yeah.
Right. And so kind of be careful of that we don't, not that you and I, but in general, you don't even overpromise yourself what that would be. In this broken world, even in healthy, good marriages, where we all need improvement. We all need to, because we are prone to sin and sin against one another and, be harmful. Healthy relationships, unlike toxic relationships, do walk through a step of forgiveness and a reciprocity of care for one another. In a toxic relationship, that's not going to happen. Right. And so one of the things, as Diana is saying, is this level of acceptance. And I think you can learn to function better in a toxic relationship when you learn to say, it's not really going to change. I have to change. I have to do differently, not necessarily do better, but do differently. And I'm going to accept that he is who he is. It is very hard, but if I'm choosing to stay, I'm going to accept that he will not change. I must do differently in order for my life to look different. I cannot depend on his changing for my life to be different.
Yeah. Very well said, Elise.
Okay.
And you know what? I like what you said, the redirect from healing. I think we want it. I love what you said. So say it again, because we want to move away from the term healing. Like,
it's like we're at, we're in glory and we're not. We'll always want, until God takes us home, either by death or,
I think we might want to say, can I be strong? Can I be whole?
There we
Can I be well? You know what I mean? But I think we'll be doing the work of healing until Jesus comes.
Yes. Yeah.
Because life just keeps throwing you those curveballs,
Mm-hmm.
and wounds, and life is difficult. So,
Like in our own culture, it is so propagated. Our happiness is so propagated that, it is hard for us to live in tension, and as it should be. But it does expose tension, toxicity, and which can be wildly different. Expose the brokenness of this world, right? And that it's we long for the day that we will be ultimately healed from this brokenness. I don't think that that's really the question of the, the participant tonight, of the ladies tonight, but really saying realistically, if that stays the way it
Mhm.
is, there will always be some element of hurt going on
You
because you're
know,
for the toxic person.
yeah, and here, let's do this. How about we change that word, can I be healed, to can I be well? I think that's a biblical term,
Uh-huh.
that we could use when Jesus was asking, was it the guy at the well?
Mhm.
Do you want to be well? Well, pick up your mat and let's walk. You
Mhm.
like
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, I do you mind if we're almost at the hour, but I do have an exercise we used when I was doing some teen work.
Let's do it. I think they would love it.
Well, okay, so in fact, I did it with my kids in the backyard, as well. Instead of going to church one day, we sat in the backyard, and so what we would do with teens and their parents would be forgiveness work. And we just sat and because I'm actually kind of responding to Shelley, who said this is hard on my body being angry. You feel drained when you feel it, and so why not just you know make it an event. You could do it with a friend, you can do it alone, but
Mhm.
get yourself a little bucket or sit before a campfire and and have your sheet of paper out and just ask the Lord, who would you like me to forgive? What am I holding on to? What events, what experiences, what resentments? And this is kind of just a symbolic exercise, and you write those down. And then, as you come before the Lord, you choose intentionally a prayer of letting go, a
Mhm.
prayer of forgiveness. Like, I'm choosing this, Lord. So symbolically, I'm putting this on paper, and we do this exercise in the rumination journal. I'm writing it down, and instead of putting it in the trash as we did with the rumination journal, what we're going to say is, Lord, I'm giving it to you, and you kind of light it on fire. Uh,
Mhm.
toss it in the campfire,
Mhm.
uh, burn that. And as symbolic that I've let this go.
Mhm.
And then walk away. And as it comes back to you, yeah, it will come back to you again. And so you want to get your body and your mind to clarity, whatever it takes to help you to do that. Sometimes it's just praising the Lord,
Mhm.
choosing to shift the narrative and what you're focusing on. Um, so something like that, I think for me, symbolically, it's been helpful because I'll remember that event and I'll like, oh yeah, it's gone. I
Mhm.
give it to him.
I I I threw it away. I let it go.
Yeah.
I remember now that I let that go. Right. And maybe I've learned some things from that event that help
Yeah.
me not to stay angry and do differently going forward. Give yourself that opportunity to do differently.
I need to answer a question here, Elise.
Okay, let's
E2C is for everybody. E2C it's empowered to change. So you don't have to be in a toxic relationship to be empowered to change. It's a really an excellent group. So
Mhm.
you'll be with a group of 15 women and a coach for 6 months, meeting every other week for 90 minutes. And you don't have to be married. You don't have to be any status. You just have to be female, right?
Right.
An adult female.
Right.
And we have
Yeah.
5 of us. We have groups all throughout the week. Good night, Lisa. We have groups throughout the week. And so the ticker is up here. It's at leslievernick.com/change. It
Mhm.
is truly a transformative process.
Mhm.
If you do engage in it and show up, you will look back and be
Right.
different. And so I encourage you all to consider, if you have the ability for the time, uh, um, and to engage in the work.
Mhm.
It's definitely
Mhm.
worth looking into. It's a brand new year. It's a great time to make those changes. And Lisa and I've been on the coaching team as long as Leslie's had coaches, right? And we've gone through this so many times. And I'll tell you, I go through the material and I'm still peeling back the layers. It's just really rich.
Right.
I'm always discovering something each time I teach the class, something new about myself. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really fun to bond with these group of women. Many
Mm-hmm.
of them do go on to form relationships and continue the growth work, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
this is so crazy. It's like, you know, Diana and I go as many times if we've been through it, we still always go through it again before we teach the lesson, and we almost always do it with one another and go through it. And just recently, we're doing it with more and more of the coaches. But we're just like always amazed every time, like how much we get from it yet again when we're teaching it.
no,
We're just like, wow.
you hear something you didn't hear before. Yeah, it's so
Yeah,
good.
it's
So we're not making it up either. And I'm not kidding. I mean, we pay a lot of money for training, right?
right.
And I'm telling you, I know what good work is. This is
Yeah,
good work to do. And it's not just learning,
right,
it's really stepping into a new you,
right,
new way of being. And so we talk about that work of do I want to be well? Do I
right,
want to grow? It's part of the healing path.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Go ahead.
And I was just asking you if there's anything else. I'll look through the feed to see if there's a question.
I think I think we're good. I
I
think you
think we've covered just about everything. And
did. I hope you all had a sense of, an opportunity to begin to think about healing. What would this mean for you? Again, we're inviting you into our ETC class so that you can do this healing work with others. You will not be the only one that wants to do it different. Have 14 other sisters. Yes? Are you raising your hand?
we got one more question we probably should get to, if that's
Okay.
all right.
All right.
One,
Yeah.
we got one
Sure.
question.
This is
I
it.
want to leave Nicole out of there, especially since I think she's the one who comes to us from Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
We'd love to be there right now. How to be open and vulnerable again. So could we answer that
Yeah.
just briefly? What would you think?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I think if you're in any kind of intimate relationship with somebody or a very close relationship, and there's been a breach in that relationship, or there's certainly harm in the relationship, how do we become like I'm married to this person? How do I get vulnerable again? And so we do it one with not by not forgetting. We do it with forgiveness, but not forgetting, and that we really do look at the difference between kind of old history when somebody has said I'm sorry, they are aware of the offense that they had. Like we don't want to trust somebody who has no awareness of how they or why they offended you. Like you can forgive them certainly, but you don't want to trust them if they don't know how or why they offended you. So we're looking for some awareness of how or why the offense happened and occurred, and kind of a long sustaining pattern of doing differently, not just you know uh, usually most offenders, including any of us, like hey, we kind of like hey, we've said we're sorry, now we want to kind of move on. And that's we do want to move on, but we're going to move on cautiously and not begin to trust or be vulnerable again until it is safe. And safe means you've got a lot of indication and a lot of information that there's been genuine change.
Yeah, I would just add to that as well. I think that was pretty comprehensive. I would say, how do I be open and vulnerable again? I think the short end of that is I need to know who I am. I need to know myself so that I can, firmly step into what's okay and what's not okay with me,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And and walk forward with wisdom, which again, I'm just going to make another segue into E2C. If you want to know yourself, I
Mhm.
think a lot of times we allow things in because we're not quite sure. But
Mhm.
if you're strong, have you guys ever met? Like I've always admired. I used to have this picture, but I put it up for now. My great niece has just a lot of chutzpah. I mean, she's a strong woman. And I was like, she's in her early 20s and she was professional and I'm like, boy, I didn't have that confidence. And I think confidence comes in knowing who you are
Mhm.
And then along with that, comes wisdom. Because if I'm firmly rooted in who I am and who I am in the Word of God, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for asking that question. It's a very common question and one that I think we all have to, anytime in any relationship there's been a breach, we have to kind of start asking that question. So it was a great way for us to close. Thank you so much, ladies. We really enjoyed it. We'd love to come to you and kind of just talk about some things that are real going on in your life and in our life, certainly. And so we want to just be real with you and walk it out with you. And we're here. We're so glad that you participated tonight. You cannot know. And so thank you again. Anything?
Thanks again, ladies.
Thanks, ladies. We're going to sign off. Good night.